Beneath the serene waters of Lake Brienz in Switzerland, where the villages cling to mountain sides like moss to ancient stones, a mystery older than any local legend persisted, unfathomed by the depths and undisturbed by the passing boats. This lake, renowned for its vibrant blue, held secrets not in its waters, but deep within its surrounding woods, where few tourists ventured. The locals spoke of the Whispering Woods, not out of superstition, but rather a respectful fear solidified through generations. No one knew exactly when the disappearances began, but every few years, whispers of another missing hiker, another unresolved mystery, would ripple through the villages like the lake's own undercurrents. It was here, against this backdrop of scenic beauty and whispered warnings, that our story unfolds, with an unsuspecting protagonist whose thirst for adventure would lead him into the heart of these very woods. Michael, a young teacher from a nearby town, had always been fascinated by the untold stories of the world. His friends described him as a seeker, always chasing the thrill of the unknown, always the first to venture where others hesitated. It was this relentless curiosity that drew him to Lake Brienz during his summer break, equipped with nothing but a backpack, a camera, and a worn-out map he'd found tucked in the pages of an old travel guide. As he approached the edge of the Whispering Woods, the air grew thick, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears, heavy and total. Michael felt a chill trail down his spine, an instinctual warning. But his feet moved forward, driven by the kind of determination that had defined his entire life. Little did he know his steps were being watched, not by anything human, but by the very essence of the forest itself, which seemed to breathe in sync with his deep, hesitant inhalations. The deeper Michael ventured, the more the woods seemed to shift around him. Paths that appeared on his map were consumed by thick underbrush or ended abruptly at the banks of rushing streams that didn't exist on any chart. The sun filtered through the leaves in dapples, disorienting him, making him question whether the light led him forward or called him back. As he pressed on, the woods whispered in hushed tones, leaves rustling in a language he felt he almost understood, an ancient dialogue between wind and leaf. Then he stumbled upon a clearing, where the trees parted like the stage curtains in a theater, revealing a scene that sent his heart into his throat. There, in the center of the natural amphitheater, lay the remnants of what looked like a campsite. But it was no ordinary sight. Scattered around were belongings, aged and weathered by time, as if the campers had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only the ghostly outline of their presence. Compelled by a mix of fear and intrigue, Michael began documenting his findings, his camera clicking away as he moved around the campsite. Each photograph was a piece of the puzzle, yet as he captured the last of the images, he realized the sun was perilously close to setting. Night in the Whispering Woods was something even the boldest locals avoided. As the light dimmed, Michael sensed an unsettling shift in the air, a coldness that crept up his spine, enveloping him in dread. It was then that he heard it. A low, mournful howl that didn't belong to any animal known to roam the Swiss Alps. Frozen, camera in hand, Michael stood as the shadows deepened, and the howl grew closer, a sound that seemed not just to echo around him, but within him as well. With darkness sealing off every escape route and the unknown drawing near, Michael faced a choice that could mean the difference between a story told or a tale that ended with him as just another whisper in the woods. What happened next would leave the locals talking for generations, and perhaps finally solve the mystery of the Whispering Woods, or entangle Michael within it forever. As Michael's heart pounded in his chest, the eerie howl tapered off into a silence that was somehow louder than the noise itself. Night had fallen swiftly, as it often did in these mountains, cloaking everything in a blanket of darkness that was as disorienting as it was complete. The young teacher knew he should turn back, make his way to the safety of the village before the forest's nocturnal residents emerged in earnest. But something about the campsite, with its eerie, unexplained desolation, beckoned him to delve deeper, to uncover its stories. Drawing a deep breath to steady his nerves, Michael switched on the flashlight he'd clipped to his belt. The beam sliced through the darkness, casting long shadows that danced around him like specters of the past. He hesitated for a moment, considering his options. Practical wisdom argued for a retreat, but his innate curiosity, That insatiable hunger for the truth that had driven him to this remote part of Switzerland urged him on. Just a few minutes, he murmured to himself. Just a few minutes to gather some clues. Turning back to the campsite, Michael's light caught on something half buried under a pile of leaves. He crouched down, brushing aside the detritus of many seasons to reveal a leather-bound journal. Its cover was weathered, its pages swollen with moisture, but it was still intact. Carefully, Michael opened it to the first page, where faded ink told the beginnings of a story that might just explain the mystery at hand. The journal belonged to a hiker named Thomas, according to the neat script on the first page. The entries started off full of excitement and awe at the natural beauty of the area, the exhilaration of escaping the bustling city life for the peace of the woods. But as Michael flipped through the pages, the tone shifted. Thomas wrote about feeling watched, about sounds in the night that didn't fit the normal calls of nocturnal animals. His descriptions grew more paranoid with each entry. He talked of following mysterious footprints that appeared each morning around his tent, of whispers that floated through the trees, speaking a language he couldn't understand but felt in his bones was ancient, perhaps even sacred. Michael's flashlight flickered, a brief interruption that jerked him back to the present. He shook it, the beam steadied, and he continued to read. The last entry was dated 2 weeks prior to Thomas's expected return date. It ended abruptly in the middle of a sentence, without any clue as to what interrupted the writer. A chill ran down Michael's spine as he processed the implications. He scanned the clearing once more, his light catching on other personal items, a rusted cooking pot, a frayed backpack, a pair of boots standing empty and solemn. It was as if the campers had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only these few belongings as silent witnesses to their mysterious fate. Compelled by a mix of fear and responsibility, Michael knew he couldn't leave these stories untold. He packed the journal into his backpack, intending to bring it back to the authorities, when a sudden rustling sound from the edge of the clearing froze him in place. His heart thudded painfully in his chest as he slowly turned the flashlight towards the noise. There, in the halo of light, stood a figure. It was distant yet unmistakable, a person or something that once was, shrouded in the darkness of the woods. The figure stood motionless, watching, as if calculating Michael's every potential move. The air around them thickened, as heavy and foreboding as a storm cloud ready to burst. Michael's mind raced. Was this a lost hiker? Or something else, something the whispered legend spoke of? The figure took a step forward, the crunch of dry leaves underfoot unervingly loud in the silent night. Caught between his desire to flee and the need to know more, Michael stood his ground, his camera now hanging forgotten by his side. Who or what was this figure, and could it be the key to the disappearances? The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. As the figure edged closer, Michael could see that it was draped in an old, tattered coat that hung loosely on its frame. The face was obscured by the shadow of the trees, adding to the mystery and fear that tightened around Michael's chest like a vice. His instincts screamed at him to turn and run, but his feet remained planted, as if the forest floor had grown roots that entwined themselves around his boots. With a cautious voice, Michael called out, "Hello? Can I help you?" His voice sounded brittle in the heavy silence, breaking the momentary stillness that had enveloped the clearing. The figure stopped, tilting its head slightly, as though puzzled by Michael's presence. There was a long pause, during which the only sounds were the distant calls of nocturnal birds and the rustle of leaves. Then, in a voice that was barely more than a whisper, the figure replied, "Lost, so lost." The simplicity and human frailty evident in the voice took Michael aback. This was no ghost or forest spirit, but a person as real and scared as he was. His fear subsided slightly, replaced by a surge of empathy. "Are you hurt? How long have you been out here?" Michael took a tentative step forward, his flashlight aimed at the ground to avoid blinding the stranger. The figure shuffled forward into the light, revealing a middle-aged man with a gaunt face and eyes that reflected a mixture of confusion and relief. "Weeks, maybe longer," he muttered, glancing around as if seeing the woods for the first time. I started following the whispers. They promised to lead me out. Michael's thoughts raced. This man could be another hiker who had fallen victim to the same strange allure that the woods seemed to emit. But what whispers was he talking about? The pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming together, but each piece seemed to deepen the mystery rather than solve it. Determined to learn more, Michael asked, "What whispers? What are they saying?" The man looked wary, as if worried about how much to share. Voices that aren't voices. They speak of old secrets, of hidden paths that lead to forgotten places. He paused, his eyes darting around nervously. They're not kind, the voices. They don't like outsiders. A chill ran down Michael's spine. He remembered the journal entries about feeling watched, about the eerie footprints. This man's experience seemed to echo Thomas's, painting a picture of a forest not merely alive but sentient in some unervingly human way. "Let's get you out of here," Michael suggested, his tone gentle. "We can find help in the village. Tell me, do you remember the way back?" The man shook his head slowly. "Oh, past change. They don't want me to leave. They might not let you leave either." The implication of his words hung in the air, heavy and ominous. Michael realized that finding this man might have been no accident. Perhaps they were meant to meet, thrown together by the forest's inscrutable will. As they conversed, Michael kept his camera rolling, documenting every word, every revelation that might help unravel the truth. The thought of turning this ordeal into a compelling story for his viewers spurred him on, driving him to dig deeper into the heart of these woods' secrets. Together they started walking, the man leaning on Michael for support. Every so often, Michael glanced back, half expecting to see shadows moving just beyond the reach of his flashlight. The forest seemed to watch and listen, its whispers now silent as if waiting for the right moment to speak once again. The night deepened, the darkness growing more oppressive, and the path forward more uncertain. With each step, the tension mounted, the sense that they were not alone growing stronger. Michael knew they needed to find their way out before the forest decided their fates. As they continued, the forest seemed to close in around Michael and the mysterious man, the trees casting long, gnarled shadows that twisted and turned as if alive. The man's steps grew more hesitant, his reliance on Michael's guidance increasing with each passing moment. Michael's mind raced with questions, but he focused on the path ahead, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, searching for any sign that might lead them out of the thickening woods. The air grew colder, the night sounds eerily muted as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The man's whispers became more frequent, his words tinged with urgency. "They're near," he murmured repeatedly, his voice trembling. Michael's grip on his camera tightened, his other hand holding the flashlight steady as it flickered ominously, signaling a low battery. Just as they reached a narrow ridge that offered a precarious path forward, a thick fog began to roll in, enveloping them in a ghostly white veil. Visibility dropped sharply, the beam from Michael's flashlight now a weak glow barely piercing the dense fog. The man stopped, his body rigid with fear. "We can't go this way," he whispered hoarsely. "They don't want us to leave." Michael felt a pang of fear but pushed it aside, his resolve hardening. "We're not going back," he insisted, his voice low but firm. "There has to be a way through. We can't let this forest trap us." He tried to step forward, but the man grabbed his arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "You don't understand," he said, his eyes wild with fear. "It's not just the forest. It's what the forest hides. We're not supposed to find it, and they'll do anything to stop us." Michael's heart pounded in his chest, the man's words echoing the mysterious and menacing themes from the journal. He glanced around, the fog and darkness compressing the space into a claustrophobic bubble. Every shadow seemed to move, every rustle of leaves a whisper of warning. Deciding to take control, Michael pulled free from the man's grasp. "Stay here if you must, but I'm going on," he declared, stepping carefully along the ridge. His senses heightened to every subtle shift in the forest's eerie chorus. No sooner had he taken a few steps than a low growl rolled through the fog, a sound so deep and primal that it vibrated the ground beneath his feet. Michael froze, his flashlight sweeping across the thick white mist, revealing nothing but the dense undergrowth on either side of the narrow path. The growling grew louder, more insistent, a sound that seemed not just heard but felt. Michael's breath caught in his throat as shadows began to coalesce in the fog, forms taking shape at the edge of his vision. They were surrounded. The realization hit him with a chilling certainty. He backed slowly towards the man who hadn't moved, his eyes fixed on the shifting shadows. "We need to stick together," Michael whispered, reaching out to him. Just as their hands met, a sudden surge in the fog swept around them, the growling crescendoing into a deafening roar. The tension peaked as they stood back to back, Michael's flashlight flickering one final time before dying, plunging them into darkness. The sounds of the forest amplified around them, the growling interspersed with those haunting, whispering voices, promising secrets and threats in equal measure. As they braced themselves, the forest seemed to pulsate with life, the climax of their terrifying journey just moments away. Michael knew that whatever happened next, the truth of the whispering woods might finally reveal itself, for better or worse. In the pitch darkness, their breaths shallow and quick, Michael and the man clung to each other, the only certainty in a world that seemed to churn and shift around them. The forest's growls had morphed into an almost palpable presence, pressing in from all sides with a weight that was suffocating. Just as panic threatened to take hold, a sharp crack pierced the night, followed by a beam of light slicing through the fog. For a moment, Michael thought it was the moon breaking through, but the light was too focused, too deliberate. Another beam joined the first, then another, until a dozen focused streams of light cut through the darkness, converging on where Michael and the man stood. Voices, human and clear, called out from the direction of the lights. "Over here. This way," they shouted. Relief surged through Michael's veins, so intense it was almost dizzying. They were not alone. Help had arrived. As the figures behind the lights came into view, Michael's relief was quickly replaced with confusion. The rescuers weren't search and rescue teams, nor were they local villagers. They wore uniforms he didn't recognize, dark and tactical, moving with precision and purpose. One of them, a woman with a stern face, stepped forward. "Michael," she asked, her voice firm. "Yes," he stammered, still trying to comprehend the situation. "We need help." "We know," she replied, glancing at the man with Michael. "We've been tracking you since you entered the forest. It's imperative we get you out now." As they were quickly ushered along the path, the fog seemed to retreat with the advancing lights. The growls and whispers of the forest faded, receding back into the shadows as if scared away by the newcomers. Michael looked over his shoulder, half expecting the shadows to follow, but there was nothing except the dark, silent woods. Once clear of the forest, the group reached a small clearing where several vehicles were parked, their engines idling softly. The stern-faced woman guided Michael to an SUV, her grip on his arm reassuringly firm. "Who are you?" Michael finally asked, his mind racing with a new surge of questions. "We're part of a government agency specializing in environmental anomalies," she explained without slowing her pace. "This forest, these woods, they're a special case. Something unnatural lives here. It's our job to contain it, to study it." Michael's mind reeled. This was the second twist in his already unbelievable adventure. Not only were the whispers and apparitions real, but they were also known to some secretive government body. The implications were enormous. "We've been monitoring activity here after we lost contact with another operative last month," she continued, her voice low. "The man you were with, he was that operative." The revelation hit Michael like a blow. The man, so scared and lost, was an agent sent by this very team. "Is he going to be okay?" Michael asked, glancing back at the man who was being attended to by another agent. "We'll do our best to debrief and decompress him," she said, her tone softening. "His experience out there was profound. It changes a person." As they drove away from the forest, Michael watched the trees shrink in the rearview mirror, the weight of the night's events settling around him like a cloak. What had started as a simple exploration had spiraled into an encounter with a hidden world, one that lurked just beyond the reach of ordinary perception. The deeper truths of the Whispering Woods were more intricate and dangerous than he could have imagined. And now, caught in the gears of something much larger, Michael knew his journey was far from over. As the SUV sped away from the Whispering Woods, the sense of urgency among the agents did not wane. Michael, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and curiosity, watched the stern-faced woman, who seemed to hold answers to the bizarre questions that night had posed. "What exactly is in that forest?" Michael asked, unable to contain his need for answers any longer. The woman, who introduced herself as Agent Caldwell, hesitated before responding. "What we know is limited, but we believe it's an entity, or perhaps multiple entities, that are not fully understood. They seem to feed off human emotions, particularly fear and curiosity, which is why the forest has a history of drawing people in and sometimes not letting them go." Michael absorbed her words, the reality of his encounter sinking in. He thought about the strange, almost sentient behavior of the forest, and the whispers that seemed almost guiding, yet menacing. It was a lot to take in, and yet, part of him felt a thrill at having touched upon something so inexplicably profound. As they approached a secure facility, Agent Caldwell continued, "Our work is to study these phenomena without interference. Unfortunately, your presence there tonight has likely caused a significant disturbance." Michael frowned. "What do you mean? Am I in trouble?" "Not exactly," Caldwell replied, her expression unreadable. "But there might be consequences. These entities, they connect with those they encounter. You might have noticed the effects: disorientation, fear, an inexplicable draw to return." A chill ran down Michael's spine. He had indeed felt an overwhelming pull, a desire to uncover the mysteries the forest whispered about. Now, knowing that these might be manipulations by unseen forces made him question his own perceptions. They arrived at the facility, a nondescript building that looked more like a high-security research center than anything governmental. Inside, Michael was introduced to a team of researchers who debriefed him on his experiences, his encounter with the lost operative, and the specifics of what he heard and saw. After hours of questioning and examinations, Michael was finally allowed to rest. In the solitude of a small, stark room, the weight of exhaustion overcame him, and he drifted into a restless sleep, haunted by dreams of shadowy figures and whispers that felt all too real. Upon waking, Michael was greeted by Agent Caldwell, who had one more revelation for him. "We've analyzed your footage and the readings from the devices we had placed in the forest," she explained. "There's something about your interaction with the entity that's different. It seems to have formed a unique connection with you, a resonance we've not seen before." The words struck Michael with a mix of fear and fascination. "What does that mean for me?" "It means," Caldwell paused, choosing her words carefully, "that you might be the key to understanding these entities more than anyone before. Your experience could lead to breakthroughs in our research." The final twist lay in the opportunity before him. Rather than being a mere survivor of a strange encounter, Michael was now central to unraveling one of nature's most enigmatic mysteries. The agency offered him a position to work alongside them, to explore further the phenomena of the Whispering Woods under controlled conditions. It was a chance to turn his harrowing experience into something groundbreaking. Michael, still reeling from the night's revelations, realized that his journey into the unknown was far from over. If anything, it was just beginning. The choice was his, to return to his normal life or dive deeper into the mystery that had chosen him as much as he had stumbled upon it. The allure of the unknown whispered to him once more, promising deeper secrets yet to be uncovered. Michael stood at a crossroads, both literally and metaphorically, as he contemplated the offer to join the agency's research team. The Whispering Woods, with their eerie calls and shadowy figures, had left an indelible mark on his psyche. Part of him yearned to return to his routine life, to the safety and normalcy of his teaching job, away from the unpredictable allure of the unknown. Yet another part, the innate curiosity that had driven him into the woods in the first place, whispered promises of revelations and wonders that few had ever witnessed. After much deliberation, Michael decided to accept the offer. The decision wasn't made lightly. He understood the potential dangers and the burden of carrying the knowledge of things that lay beyond the normal understanding of the world. But the drive to learn, to understand, and perhaps to protect others from the enigmatic forces of the forest was too compelling to ignore. His new role involved working closely with Agent Caldwell and her team, diving deeper into the analysis of the forest's phenomena. Michael's unique connection to the entity provided invaluable insights into the nature of the anomalies. The team developed protocols to safely interact with and study the entity, using Michael's experiences as a guide. Over time, Michael's fear transformed into a profound respect for the mysterious forces, balancing on the fine line between the scientific and the supernatural. As the months passed, Michael documented his experiences and the team's findings, preparing papers that would eventually shake the scientific community's understanding of what was possible. The once fearful whispers of the woods now became a source of endless fascination, revealing patterns and behaviors that hinted at an intelligence that defied simple explanation. Back in his personal life, Michael found it challenging to reconcile his extraordinary work with the mundane aspects of daily existence. His friends and family noticed a change in him, a certain distant look in his eyes when he gazed at the forest line or lost himself in thought. They worried, but Michael reassured them, sharing as much as he could about his work, framed in a way that sparked curiosity rather than fear. Ultimately, Michael's story became a beacon for those drawn to the mysteries of the natural world. He started a blog, carefully curated to avoid revealing sensitive information, where he discussed his journey and reflections on human interaction with the unknown. His posts resonated with many, attracting a following of fellow enthusiasts and skeptics alike. The blog provided a platform for discussion and debate, opening up a dialogue about the balance between exploration and respect for forces that humanity might never fully understand. In the end, Michael's life settled into a new normal. He found purpose in his role, bridging the gap between the known and the unknown. The Whispering Woods, once a place of fear and mystery, now stood as a testament to the human spirit's unending quest for knowledge. And while some questions remained unanswered, Michael was content in the knowledge that some mysteries were meant to be explored, not solved. As he looked back at the path that had led him here, Michael knew that his journey through the Whispering Woods was more than a tale of survival. It was a story of transformation. It was about the courage to face the unknown, the pursuit of knowledge, and the understanding that the world holds deeper mysteries than one can imagine. And for those brave enough to listen, the woods would always whisper their secrets.